In the Chinese Zodiac, 2021 is the year of the ox, considered productive for those who are hardworking and methodical and fully feel the weight of their responsibilities. 7 of the 14 major markets in the Asia Pacific, China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Singapore, Thailand, Australia and New Zealand, representing 1.6 billion people or 40% of the regional total, are expected to recover from the coronavirus crisis faster than the rest of the world. The other markets in Asia, as well as many others around the globe, will likely experience local lockdowns and activity restrictions. The result will be a drain on growth for part or much of 2021. From the political perspective, many Asian nations will be held hostages of the US-China rivalry, although some countries will benefit from the so-called new Cold War. I'm your host Kasim, and thanks for joining me for another KJ Report. Just before we go deep into this topic, please kindly visit our website kjreports.com and subscribe to one of our plans or support us on Patreon. While the world remains in the worst crisis it has experienced in generations, the global economy's centre of gravity seems to be shifting to the east. According to the Asian Development Bank, pandemic-induced lockdowns and restrictions have been eased in varying levels on the continent, with merchandise exports rebounding quickly from substantial declines in the second quarter of 2020. Mobility is also reportedly returning to pre-COVID-19 levels in East Asia and the Pacific, where the spread of the coronavirus has largely been contained or prevented in recent months. A recovery in tourism, however, is likely to be delayed, which will affect countries such as Thailand and Indonesia. At the same time, India's growth is likely to slow over the next 6 months due to local level activity restrictions, ongoing problems in the finance sector, and rising stress for small and medium enterprises. 2021 is going to be a crucial year for the current Indian government, dominated by the BJP, since it will face a series of assembly elections that will, combined with the economic crisis, ensure enough tension in domestic politics. Also, India's relations with its arch-enemy Pakistan will remain tense, although they will unlikely lead to a full-scale military confrontation between the two nuclear powers. Central Asia, on the other hand, will remain on the periphery of events, at least in terms of economy. The region can hardly count on any growth, and political instability in countries such as Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan should not be ruled out. In Afghanistan, the Taliban is expected to strengthen its position as a political actor. However, political uncertainty is likely to dominate 2021 and drive conflict between the Taliban and Afghan government forces. Tensions between North and South Korea will not disappear in 2021. The outgoing US President Donald Trump held 3 historic meetings with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Joe Biden's camp has recently suggested that the new American president would force a principled diplomacy, which could include meetings with Kim if they are part of a strategy that helps make progress toward North Korea's denuclearization. However, Pyongyang is extremely unlikely to give up its nuclear weapons, which means that the status quo for the Korean Peninsula is the most realistic option for 2021. This year, the new American administration is expected to pressure Russia to return the Kuril Islands to Japan. Moscow has already started deploying modern sophisticated weapons to the region, while Washington is sending signals that the disputed territory could be another point of confrontation between the West and Russia. The chain of islands stretching between the Japanese island of Hokkaido at the southern end and the Russian Kamchatka Peninsula in the north has been an integral part of Russia since 1945. It is a territory that the Soviet Union conquered at the end of World War II after Imperial Japan was defeated. Unless the Kremlin is faced with mayhem followed by economic collapse, it is very improbable that Moscow will agree to make any concessions to Tokyo, as the Kuril Islands are of great economic and geostrategic importance for the Russian Federation. Despite the new American presidential administration, the US-China relations will remain tense in 2021. The Biden administration will, however, probably want to bolster relations with Southeast Asia to create a border coalition to push back against some of Beijing's actions. Vietnam is one of the regional countries that could, at least to a certain extent, benefit from the US-China trade war. Vietnam's economy, despite the pandemic, has continued to showcase strong growth patterns, leading investors to favourably consider the country as a solid investment destination. Vietnam fought the pandemic early, closing its borders, suspending visas and flights, and imposing social isolation measures to better contain the pandemic. All this seems to have paid off, as the nation was able to reopen its economy early, resuming economic activity. Data shows that Vietnam is one of the few countries after China to record net positive GDP growth. Despite the pandemic for Hanoi, one of the most significant events in 2020 was the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement. It came into effect on August 1, 2020, paving the way for increased trade between the EU and Vietnam, eliminating almost 99% of custom duties. Analysts hope that the trade deal will give a much-needed boost to Vietnam's industries such as manufacturing as it looks to recover from the pandemic. According to a report released by the World Bank, Vietnam's gross domestic product is expected to grow by 6.8% in 2021. Given the low production costs in Vietnam, many companies could start shifting their operations there from China, should the trade war between Washington and Beijing continue. China, on the other hand, signed an investment deal with the European Union that will give European companies greater access to Chinese markets and help redress what Europe sees as unbalanced economic ties. Even though the agreement has been nearly 7 years in the making, it will likely take at least another year to enter force. Under the agreement, European firms will gain permission to operate in China in sectors including electric cars, private hospitals, real estate, advertising, the maritime industry, telecom cloud services, airline reservation systems, and ground handling. In turn, China will ban the forced transfer of technology from foreign companies and has pledged to be more transparent on subsidies and bar state-owned enterprises from discriminating against foreign investors. China's growth has decoupled from the global economy in the second half of 2020. It has combined fast suppression of COVID-19 with a steady local demand recovery and strong exports. This dynamic, according to IMA Asia, should continue through 2021, although this year's rising trade surplus is likely to reverse. From the political perspective, China will likely face some serious challenges as the US and its allies are expected to create tensions on multiple fronts, including India, Taiwan, the South China Sea, and Japan. That, however, does not mean that the threat of an armed conflict is very high. As the ancient Chinese strategist Sun Tzu said, "The best of the best is to subdue the enemy without fighting." It is quite debatable whether COVID-19 has killed Asia's growth miracle. As the Wall Street Journal recently pointed out, Asian economies are emerging as clear winners in the race to a full recovery. However, Asian economies heavily depend on global trade, and slow demand from the West could dent their recovery. Diversifying Asia's economies away from over-reliance on exports is a work in progress. A fundamental reorientation toward domestic demand will take time and presents an exceptionally difficult challenge, especially for the smallest economies in the region. Many of them will also be victims of the US-China turbulent relations. After all, when elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. Thanks for watching another KJ Report. I hope you enjoyed this video and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Which significant events do you think will occur in Asia this year? We'd love to hear your views. Please don't forget to visit our website kjreports.com and subscribe to us on Patreon. Your support is critical to the survival of KJ Reports, and we fully rely on your donations to survive. Thanks for watching again. See you next time.